Discriminatory practices can typically be grouped under one of four categories: disparate treatment, disparate impact, harassment, and retaliation. Let's take a look at disparate impact. Disparate treatment refers to intentionally unfair and illegal treatment of a particular individual. But discrimination may also take a more subtle and usually unintentional form known as disparate impact or adverse impact. Disparate impact is discrimination that occurs when an employment practice results in members of a protected class being treated less favorably than members of a non-protected class, even though discrimination was not intentional. Disparate impact occurs when a company uses an employment practice that unintentionally discriminates against members of a protected class. For example, a job requirement at a home improvement store might state that all employees must be 6 feet tall to perform a job that requires regularly reaching up to obtain items from high shelves. This job requirement might not be intended to discriminate against anyone. It may, however, lead to discrimination against several protected classifications, including females and members of some minority groups. A useful way to think about the difference between disparate treatment and disparate impact is that disparate treatment focuses on the treatment of a particular person or group of persons within a protected class, and explicitly considers the motivation for the company's action. Disparate impact, on the other hand, focuses on the consequences of the employment practice. The court case that identified disparate impact as discrimination was GRIGGS versus Duke Power Company, decided in 1971. At a Duke Power generating plant, black employees challenged the employer's selection requirements. Specifically, to be hired for or to be transferred to other jobs at the plant, applicants had to possess a high school diploma and pass 2 professionally prepared aptitude tests, selection requirements not designed to measure ability to learn a particular job. Also, prior to the passage of major civil rights legislation in 1964, the company had a history of discriminating on the basis of race, even to the extent of restricting black employees to the lowest level jobs within one department and paying them less than the lowest paying job in the other 4 operating departments. In reviewing the case, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the company had not intended to discriminate. However, the selection criteria resulted in discrimination. The relevance of the criteria was suspect because there were employees doing just fine in the jobs in question who did not have a high school diploma and who had not taken the tests. Also, blacks in the area were less likely than whites to have a high school diploma and would be less likely to pass the tests because of their lack of education. The employer could not show that having a high school diploma and passing the tests were necessary to be able to perform the jobs. Thus, discrimination occurred even though it was not the company's intent. The issue of disparate impact is whether the employer can show that there is a valid, job-related reason for using the selection criterion that discriminates. In establishing selection criteria, or deciding who gets raises or promotions or training, managers need to think about the possible outcomes of their choices. Unintentionality is not an acceptable defense in disparate impact cases. Most importantly, using non-job-related criteria for making such decisions ultimately affects the success of the organization as it rewards the wrong behaviors and attitudes. To make a case for disparate impact, the plaintiff or employee must first demonstrate that the outcome of the employment practice was less favorable for his or her protected class than for the majority. The 4/5 rule is a guideline generally accepted by the courts and the EEOC for making such a prima facie case of disparate impact. A cautionary note is in order here. As a manager, you should not try to hire by the numbers. A manager should not simply calculate how many minority group members need to be hired and hire that many to be in compliance based on the 4/5 rule.